Go ahead and take out your writer's notebook for me. And put the date on the corner. Today is February 1st. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the rubric that they use when they score your FSA writing test. Now, I do want to let you know, when they hire people to score these essays, and they do train them, but they spend less than 3 minutes reading your essay. So think about that. They spend less than 3 minutes reading your essay and giving it a score. So you really need to make sure that the person who is scoring your essay is going to see the evidence they need to see. So you need to kind of hone in on these skills. But I do want to share with you how they score it. And I'm going to start actually all the way over on the right-hand side. Your essay is going to receive a score of 0 to 10. And you can get a 0. If you copy from the text, and your essay is mostly copied material from the text, you can get a 0. If you write in another language, you can get a 0. If you don't write enough that they can even give you a number, then you can get a 0. So there are lots of ways that you can get a 0 on this. I'm confident that you won't. And I think if you pay close attention to detail when you're taking this test, and you give it your best, that you will do well. But again, it doesn't change who you are as a person. It's a number. Okay? All right, so we start with this category all the way over here, and this is a category that has to do with your conventions, your language conventions. Okay? And you can get up to 2 points here, which is why we do a skills block every single day and why we practice like we do. And even though I asked you all to proofread your essay before you turned it in, there were a lot of careless errors. A lot of you spelled British and Britain wrong. A lot of you didn't bother to capitalize it. You didn't capitalize things like the Tea Tax or the Tea Act or the Sugar Act. Capitalization was a huge problem. And the person who's scoring it, they're going to notice that. Okay? So you can get a 0 in conventions if it shows that you don't have any command of it at all. So if you're writing the word I as a lowercase I, that right there is like an automatic 0. All right? If you're not capitalizing the first word in the sentence, and there are a lot of you in this room who are not doing that, then that shows that you have a lack of command. Capitalizing the first word in a sentence is something that you learn in kindergarten. And this is 4th grade. And I'm sure that all of you can do it, but all of you don't do it. And that becomes a choice. All right? So if you don't show any kind of a command, you can get a 0. Joshua, could you stop that, please? If you're done with your snack, you need to put your mask back on. All right. You would score a 1 if you have partial, what they call partial command, okay, you might have some errors in your usage. Like, for example, your verb tenses might not be matching with your subject. Or maybe you might have some capitalization issues or punctuation issues and spelling. Some. To get a 2, you can only have minor mistakes. You can only have minor mistakes on your essay. But what they're looking for is it a pattern? For example, if they notice that you're not capitalizing the beginning of your sentences, that's a pattern. If they're noticing that you are spelling words that end in E and you add a suffix, you're spelling having as H-A-V-E-I-N-G and then writing as W-R-I-T-E-I-N-G, that's a pattern. So the difference between a 2 and a 1 really is whether or not there's a pattern. They don't expect it to be perfect to get a 2. They know that everybody makes a mistake. But as soon as they notice a pattern, you drop from a 2 to a 1. Okay, so it says minor errors in usage, but no patterns of error for number 2. Now, spelling counts. Spelling does count. So I'm going to give you a really good tip. A lot of you are spelling words that appear in the text incorrectly. A lot of you have the word intolerable. A lot of you have the word revolution in your spelling word list. Those words were right in the text. So my tip for you for improving your spelling when you're writing an essay is to look in the text and copy it from the text. That way you can ensure that you don't have any patterns. You can be ensured that you're going to maximize your points. That's 20%. 2 out of 10 points. Okay, let's move over. We're going to move a little bit to the right. And we're going to talk about, we're going to actually stop it. We're going to start at the top here for this one. All right. So we have the category of language use and conventions, and now we have the category of evidence and elaboration. 4 points. You can earn 4 points in your evidence and elaboration. Now, I noticed that a lot of you are having trouble matching your evidence with your main idea. A lot of you are using evidence that doesn't support your main idea. One of the things I noticed when I read your essays, a lot of you are talking about Paul Revere making a deliberate engraving or deliberately misrepresenting the Boston Massacre in the engraving, but that wasn't something that supported your main idea. That was extraneous. Extraneous, meaning it was extra. It took you off topic. Yes, you know that that happened, but did that have anything to do with your main idea? So those are the things that you need to be careful of. When you're talking about, I was trying to think of one of the main ideas that somebody had. When you're talking about the taxes, and how the taxes thought that they were being unfairly treated, and then you tell, in that paragraph you're talking about being tarred and feathered, that doesn't have anything to do with it. The tarring and the feathering happened for the people that didn't honor the boycott. And the tarring and the feathering, I'm not even sure belongs in that essay. So we really have to work on asking ourselves, does this support my main idea? And I think this goes back to a reading comprehension problem we have as well. When you have questions that ask you, how did the author support the idea? You have to become aware of the information that's there to prove it. Some of you are still having overlapping main ideas and overlapping evidence. If you're talking about something in more than one paragraph, it's overlapping. So we have to work on that. All right, so let's look to see what you need to do in order to get a 4. The response provides thorough and convincing support or evidence for the writer's opinion or explanation. That includes the effective use of sources, facts, and details. Okay. I'm going to kind of give you a really quick crash course in citing evidence at the end of this explanation, because a lot of you are still struggling. You put the quote, and then your next sentence says, this quote comes from, and you give me the title. And that's not a strong way of citing evidence. So we're going to review that today. But you have to make sure that you are choosing relevant evidence that integrates smoothly and thoroughly with a reference to the sources. In source 1, in text 2, in the book, The American Revolution. Effective use of a variety of elaborative techniques demonstrating understanding of the topic and text. Now, when we elaborate on opinion essays, we elaborate by saying something more. When we elaborate on an explanatory informational essay, we're providing details. So if you don't tell me what the Stamp Act was, if you don't tell me the reaction of the American colonists to the Stamp Act, you're not elaborating on the fact that the Stamp Act was one of the ways that they felt that they were being unfairly treated. It says, clear and effective expression of ideas using precise language. That's that whole thing we worked on before about making sure that we're using the vocabulary. I can't tell you how many people said that's when they taxed stuff. Okay, you've got to be specific. You've got to be accurate in your vocabulary choice. When we worked on explaining the water cycle, remember we identified the vocabulary we needed to use. Academic and domain-specific vocabulary clearly appropriate for the audience and purpose. That's the same thing. Choosing to use the academic vocabulary that we're finding in the text. Being precise. You try not to say, they taxed them, because we want to say, the British taxed the American colonists. And then finally, varied sentence structure, demonstrating language facility. That means your sentences are not all the same. Your sentences are varied. And I'll show you what that is because we actually have a chart for that in our green packet. So we'll be talking about that as well. Okay, so in order to get a 4, it has to be thorough, it has to be clear, it has to have precise language. Let's look and see what it is when it's a 3. The response provides adequate support. Okay, so we had thorough support for a 4, adequate support. It includes the use of sources, facts, and details. Generally integrated evidence from sources, though references may be general, imprecise, and inconsistent. So notice already, if you stop giving specific reference, if you just say in the text set, in what I read, which you would not say that because you're not talking to the reader, then you've already lost a point because you're not being precise as to where your evidence came from, where the source came from. Adequate use of some elaborative techniques. Adequate expression of ideas employing a mix of precise and general language. So as soon as you move away from that precise language, you start to lose points. And then some variation of sentence structure. Your sentences are a lot the same. Okay. Dropping down to a 2. The response provides uneven, cursory support, meaning it's not strong support. It's just kind of a surface support. That includes the ineffective uses of sources, facts, and details. So some of you wrote your entire essay and never attributed any of the facts to any kind of text at all. When you do that, that's when you fall below that too. Yes, you learned that. Yes, it was information, but you need to give credit for where it came from. Weakly integrated evidence from sources, erratic and irrelevant references, repetitive and ineffective use of elaborative techniques. So if you are in the habit of writing this shows in your paragraphs, that's going to be repetitive. They don't want to see like a formula. Yes, there's a pattern. Yes, there's a structure. But they don't want to see the same words over and over and over again. Imprecise or simplistic expression of ideas, inappropriate or ineffective domain-specific vocabulary. And sentences are simple. Sentences are simple. Okay, to get a 1, the response provides minimal support or evidence for the writer's opinion or explanation, including little, if any, uses of the sources, facts, and details. The response may include the following. Now, so for those of you who wrote and you gave facts and details, but you gave you didn't cite any of it, the best you can do is a 1. The best you can do is a 1. Minimal, absent, erroneous, or irrelevant evidence from the source material. Expression of ideas that are vague, unclear, or confusing. So if I wrote confusing on your checklist, you might be in danger of getting a 1 in this category. Limited or inappropriate language or domain-specific vocabulary. Now, when they say inappropriate language, okay, they're not talking about you using bad words. They're talking about you abbreviating things. Some of you have a habit of doing B/C for the word because. Some of you have a habit of making that little and symbol instead of writing out the word and. This is formal writing. This is formal writing. And so abbreviations like that don't have a place here. Okay? And then sentences are all simple sentences, meaning you don't have any dependent clauses, you don't have any compound sentences, things like that. Okay, so that's evidence and elaboration. Think about that. That's 4 points. That's a lot. Are you providing evidence? Are you only providing one piece of evidence? All right, so now we're going to move over here. This category, purpose, focus, and organization. All right, when we talk about purpose, focus, and organization, we're talking about several different things. And again, this is worth 4 points. Your purpose and your focus, your purpose comes from the prompt. Did you read the prompt accurately, and did you respond appropriately to the prompt? They're asking you to write an opinion piece. Did you write an opinion piece? If they're asking you to write an explanation informational, did you do that? What did they want you to write about? If they asked you to write about the effects that volcanoes can have on people's lives, and you wrote about how volcanoes erupt, or the different types of volcanoes there are, then your focus, your purpose is inaccurate. So you don't really know what they're asking, you don't understand what they're asking you to do. That's why it's important to read the prompt carefully. Now your focus is whether or not your essay stays on topic. Does it deal and present main ideas in a logical order? Could you stop stabbing yourself with the pencil, please, and put it on your desk if you're not going to write with it. There you go. So when you think about your focus, are you staying focused, or now are you going on this tangent about how Paul Revere made this engraving? Okay, have you gone off on a tangent and your focus on your thesis and your main idea has drifted away? Somebody in here, I think, even knew that they were doing that because they said, oh, but that's off topic. Okay, two things wrong with that. Number one, we don't talk to our reader. Number two, if we know we're going off topic, we erase what we put in there. We take it out. You don't keep it in there because that weakens your essay. It's not as strong. Okay, organization, writing in paragraphs that are indented, knowing how to write a paragraph with a main idea sentence, evidence and elaboration. All right, so let's look and see what it takes to get a 4. The response is fully sustained and consistently focused within the purpose, audience, and task. Okay, so your purpose and your focus, you know who your audience is, you know what your task is. And it has a clearly stated, and I'm going to, this is the opinion one, but it has a clearly stated thesis. A clearly stated thesis. And effective organizational structure creating coherence and completeness. Okay? Remember that coherence and completeness? That has to do with transitional phrases. That last sentence in your body paragraph, which is still kind of a challenge for some of you, that holds your essay together. A sense of completeness, getting to that conclusion and writing a good conclusion. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. All right, so it says, strongly maintained thesis with little or no loosely related material. Skillful use of a variety of transitional strategies to clarify the relationships between and among ideas. Some of you are still struggling to choose the transitional phrases accurately from the chart. If you're using the same transitional phrases to shift from one main idea to another that you're using when you present your evidence, it becomes a little confusing. If your body paragraphs say first, second, third, and inside your body paragraph it says first, second, third when you're presenting your 3 pieces of evidence, your reader is going to lose you. You're going to lose your reader. Logical progression of ideas from beginning to end with a satisfying introduction and conclusion. Satisfying. If you look at your checklist, that tells you what a satisfying introduction and conclusion is. Okay. A 3. The response is adequately sustained. So now we jump again down to adequate and generally focused with the purpose, A maintained thesis, though some loosely related material may be present. Adequate use of transitional strategies with some variety to clarify the relationships between and among ideas. Adequate progression of ideas from beginning to end with a sufficient introduction and conclusion. So we go from satisfying and fully sustained to adequate and sufficient. A 2, partially focused opinion, or I should say thesis, but insufficiently sustained or unclear. So you start out with the focus, but as you're trying to explain your main ideas, you're losing your clarity, you're losing your focus, your essay is falling apart. Inconsistent use of transitional strategies with little variety. That means you're repeating the same things over and over again. Uneven progression of ideas from beginning to end. Remember how we ordered our main ideas by the order in which they happened? When you're writing an opinion essay, you order your ideas from the one that's least important, so that you can end with the one that's most important. So you kind of build. It depends on your purpose. Okay, and a 1, the response is related to the topic, but may demonstrate little or no awareness of the purpose, audience, and task. No thesis, no discernible thesis. It has an absent, confusing, or ambiguous thesis statement, frequent extraneous ideas impeding understanding, few or no transitional strategies, too brief to demonstrate knowledge of focus or organization. Okay, so that's how it's going to be scored. Now, the checklist that you use with me, that's this rubric broken up into pieces. That's this, the elements of this rubric are integrated into that checklist. So if you have everything checked off on that checklist, you have chances are you're going to do really well. You're going to do really well. Okay, so in your notebook, let's go ahead and take a few minutes to review what you're going to be doing when you're taking this test. So go ahead and pick up your pencil. Zoom out a little bit. Okay. This test is going to be 120 minutes long. That's 2 hours. Go ahead and write that down. Now, the test is it's given all in one setting, so it's not spread over any days, but it is broken up into 2 parts. You have 60 minutes. You have a break, and it's a short break. It's just a stretch break. Get up, you stretch your legs, stretch your fingers. I usually will lead you in some kind of a stretch. We may even do one of our calm classroom activities to help us to refocus. And then we have 50 minutes, and then the 10-minute warning. And I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about the pacing. How are you going to pace yourself? How do you know if you're on track for being able to finish? And I will tell you that this is a very demanding task. Some of you kind of lose your focus and you sit there for long periods of time doing nothing or thinking or being distracted about other thoughts. There's no room for that here. So you have to do your best to stay focused, to keep your pencil moving, to stay on task the entire time, or you will not finish. All right, so let's talk about the pacing. In the first 60 minutes, and remember, you're going to get a text set. It can have as few as 2 sources, but as many as 4 sources. So you might be reading just 2 articles, or you could be reading up to 4. Okay? So in the first 60 minutes, you're going to read the prompt. If I write, you write. Then you're going to read and annotate the text set. And then you're going to plan. Now let's just talk a minute. You need to get all of those things completed, and maybe even hopefully you have written your introduction. So if you're somewhere between planning and writing your introduction, you know that you are on pace. Now you're going to get a yellow planning sheet that looks something like this. The planning sheet does not get scored by the person. You noticed on that rubric there was nothing there about what your planning sheet needed to look like. However, I am going to look at your planning sheet. And I will tell you right now, if you do not have a plan, I will be taking behavior points. And your plan needs to look like the plan I taught you. So if you haven't learned that yet, you might want to go back and review. Planning is not optional, because we know that if we have a strong plan, we won't have to stop and think. We won't have to stop and search. Everything will be right there. And guys, remember, some of you, for your bullets, you're still writing everything out. You're wasting so much time because you write it all out in your plan, and then you write it all out again in your essay. Remember that all you have to do is put the paragraph number. And make sure you underline the evidence in the paragraph that you want to use. So don't waste your time. It's precious. It's precious. So planning is not an option. Okay, so when we get to the 50-minute mark, and guys, these minutes will slip by. You have to write your 3 body paragraphs. And hopefully, do you need to go to the bathroom? Why aren't you raising your hand? But we can give the signal. It can be silent. You give the signal, I nod at you, right? So go ahead and go to the bathroom. We don't want to have an accident. And hopefully your conclusion. "50 minutes. Now, think back and reflect. The American Revolution essay that you just wrote, you had 3 hours to write that. So how was your pace? All right, how was your pace? And for some of you who I know are perfectionists, and the reason why you're so slow is because you want it perfect, my suggestion to you would be to keep moving, because guess what? When we are in the 10-minute warning, you can go back and you can proofread your work and make any changes that you want to make it better. So you're going to proofread in that last 10 minutes. Okay. That is the preferred plan. But we also have the disaster plan. And we're going to plan for disaster because sometimes it happens. By the time we get to the test, you will have gone through boot camp and you will be such an expert and you will be doing this with what we call automaticity. You won't hardly even have to think about it. Okay? So here is the disaster plan. At the 10-minute warning, no matter which body paragraph you are in, and let's pray you're in a body paragraph, you're going to come to the end of that body paragraph and you are going to write your conclusion. So, at the 10-minute warning, finish the body paragraph you are writing. And write your conclusion. What that will do is it will give your writing some sense of a completeness, that you finished it. It will give your writing a completeness. Now, tomorrow when we do this, it's a practice test. It's supposed to give you a feeling of jitters, okay? It does not count as a grade. I'm going to use the information and the data that I gather from this because I will read everybody's. I will score it using the rubric I shared with you so that you kind of get an idea. If this really was the test today, what would I have gotten? It's also going to help to identify the things that I have to reinforce in class and the things we really have to hit in our boot camp. We have 6 weeks of boot camp. So, and even if it was the test, even if it did count as a grade, and we didn't do well, the world is not going to end. The sun will rise tomorrow. We will go on. Okay? My expectation is that you do your best. That's all I'm asking you. Okay? And I will tell you that I understand the tears. I understand the tears, but the tears they're not a solution. I get them. I understand them. I cry too. But they don't help. They slow you down. They increase your anxiety. They increase your need or the feeling that you have that you're running out of time. Okay? So all I'm asking you is to do your best. Okay. The other thing, some of you are still skipping lines when you're writing. Can you stop playing with that bottle because it's really distracting? When we are using our text set in our packet, we have these lined pieces of paper. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Levi. You can go right after Claire. Go ahead. So we have 3 lined pieces of paper. That's all the paper you get. That's all the room you have for writing. Some of you write really large. You're going to have to write smaller. We'll be practicing with this amount of space throughout boot camp so that you can make sure that you have enough room. Some of you skip lines between paragraphs, and I've asked you not to do that. Now remember, when you're skipping a line, that means there's a complete blank line in between your paragraphs. Your teacher might have taught you to do that before, but when you get to 4th grade, we stopped doing that. And your paragraphs need to be indented, or else it's going to look like a huge block. And some of you are still struggling with that. And that's just a habit. That's just being aware of what you're doing. Okay, we're not going to have too much time. I wanted to I'm going to show you something that's in your green packet. You do not necessarily need to take it out because we don't have time to, but you can take it out later and look at it. There is a chart in there with sentence variety. It shows you how you can say something by starting the sentence differently. For example, Paul Revere rode through the night to warn his countrymen. That's just a basic, simple sentence. All right. You have one choice with your eyes right now, and that's up here on the screen. When I'm looking out at you and you're looking down in your lap, you're looking out the window, I know you're not paying attention. So this might be a chart you might want to take out at some point and read through. It just shows you different ways that you can write a sentence. Remember that piece, the sentence variety? I'm really not noticing a lot of you that are very simple in your sentence because a lot of you write the way you speak, so your sentences are varied. All right, the other thing I wanted to show you has to do with how you are citing your text. Okay, so one way we can cite our text is how we introduce it. And this would come before. It would come before you give. In the text it says, okay, so let's look at the example. In the text it says, and here's the quote, "The biggest crocodilian and also the biggest reptile in the world is the Australian saltwater crocodile." Now, look what's after that. In parentheses, it says Simon, and the book was written by Simon. So it's the author's last name, and then 14. That's the page it's on. Now, you can do it this way, okay? You could, and in your parentheses afterwards, it could read something like source 1, paragraph 3, in parentheses. Or you could say, in source 1, paragraph 3, it says, and you've cited the text. One or the other of those ways, Riley, should be used. Okay? We need to be introducing the quote by giving it a little bit of a transition in the text, in source 1, in the title of the article if you want to. So when we're looking at, let's go right over here. This is a better example too. When you're looking at the original text, in the past 25 years, the Crocodile Specialist Group has nurtured 16 of the 23 species of crocodilians back to increased population levels. This is a truly remarkable record. Okay, so then if we were going to quote a phrase, look at how they quote a phrase. The increase in 16 out of the 23 crocodilian species is, here's the quote, truly a remarkable record. And then after that, in parentheses, Simon 27. Period after the parentheses. If you're going to paraphrase it and mention the author, Simon notes the significance of the population increase in 16 out of 23 species, and then in the parentheses is the number, where it came from, what page it came from. In your case, you're going to be talking about paragraphs, because your paragraphs are all going to be numbered. Okay? Quote a phrase, mention the author. Simon states that the increase in 16 out of the 23 crocodilian species is truly a remarkable record, and then in the parentheses is the page number. Now, they assume when you're doing the parentheses, Ian, they assume that you're going to put a page number. So for you, you're going to put a paragraph number. And if you can see down here, see it says PAR and the number 3. That's what yours is going to look like when you're using a text set. Does everybody see that? So when you write tomorrow, I shouldn't see you doing a quote, and I should not see, this is a quote from, after you put the quote there. Because you introduce it, you quote, and if you didn't cite it in your introduction part of your sentence, at the beginning of your sentence, you cite it in parentheses afterwards. Source 1, paragraph 3. All right, we are almost out of time. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go ahead and pull out your green packet. And, here's the other thing I wanted you to do. Pull out your green packet. This was a big, huge issue in the essays that I just scored. How do you punctuate a title? Now, if it's a book, it gets underlined. So any of the American Revolution books that you quoted from and used evidence from, the title should have been there and it should have been underlined. Now, when you're using a text set, these are articles, these are short stories. They are in quotation marks. So there are two things to think about. The text here talks about which words need to be capitalized in a title. The first and the last word is always capitalized, regardless of how large it is. Capitalize all nouns, pronouns, adjectives, and verbs. Don't forget short verb forms like is, are, and be. They get capitalized. A preposition like above or under, that's more than 4 words long, gets capitalized. When you think about the words you don't capitalize, the word the word the word and really and truly, guys, look at the text. It's already going to be properly capitalized. So if you're smart and you just look at what's in front of you and pay attention to that detail, you will do it correctly. Do not capitalize little words within titles such as for, so, and, in, the, and nor, to, at, of, up, but, on, yet, by, or, and prepositions with 3 letters or less. And again, guys, you don't have to memorize this. This is a chart that you can use, not during the test, but you can use at any time. And if you're paying attention to what's in your text set and you're watching closely to that detail, you will be able to do it accurately. All right? Now, when we write by hand, like we're going to be doing, we underline the title of a book. When we're using the computer, we italicize the title of the book. So the important thing for you to think about is this a part or is this a whole? Does it get quotation marks or does it get underlined or italicized? For our text sets, we're going to be using short stories or short articles. They will always be in quotes. So just keep that in mind. I should see a change in the way you're writing your essays tomorrow. I should see a different way for you to be introducing text evidence and citing it. I should also be seeing perfection in how you write those titles, how you punctuate them. These are easy fixes. Just bringing your attention to something that you're not doing. Okay? All right. You can keep this out if you want to look at it more, or you can put it away in your binder. Clean off your desk and get ready for lunch. May I help you? I don't know. I don't know. It's possible.